Okay, first of all, a big thank you to you for inviting us to come and talk to you this morning about our work. It's been such a week for us here. You might have seen some of our press coverage we've had this week about our COVID-19 project. So it's been a mad busy one, but in a really, really good way. So I'm really happy to come and talk to you about what we do today. And I hope you'll enjoy hearing about our work. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go into a presentation in a moment. So I don't mind being fairly informal about it. If you really have a burning question as I go along, please give me a shout. I don't mind, or otherwise just store up those questions until the end. Okay, so let me share my screen.
Yeah, or else put questions on the chat and we can deal with them. Yeah,
I'm absolutely fine with that. Let's just get the slideshow going. Okay, so Medical Detection Dogs. We are very proud indeed that we have the Duchess of Cornwall is our patron. She's patron of quite a few charities, but I hope this is true. So a couple of her staff have said to us when she's visited us a few times that we are one of her favourites. Maybe her staff say that to all the charities, I'm not sure, but I know that she is a dog lover, and I know she is fascinated by the work that we do, and she is a great supporter and has helped us an awful lot this past quite difficult year. So you see in front of you here a picture of Dr. Claire Guest and a number of our very special dogs. Now, everything about our charity really sort of starts and ends with Dr. Claire Guest. So I'll tell you first of all how we came to be. So as a charity, we have been in existence for 13 years, 13. So, you know, relatively short length of time, and we've come on so far in just those 13 years. We're really excited about where the future can go. But Claire there, she is a scientist. She had a number of degrees and moved into the world of animal behaviour. But the first time her interest was really piqued on what dogs could do, we go back a long time, so about 30 odd years. And she had a very good friend called Gillian, and Gillian had a dog. She'd had this dog for many years, and the dog started showing slightly strange behaviour and was paying particular attention to a tiny little freckle, really, on the bottom of Gillian's leg. And it was becoming a real nuisance to the point that Gillian had to keep putting the dog in another room because it was driving her mad. Eventually she listened and did go to the doctors, and it turned out that this tiny little freckle that was nothing on her leg did turn out to be malignant melanoma, which was all the more odd because Gillian was only 19 years old at the time, so it really wouldn't have been expected. So we fast forward on a little bit from that to 2003, and kind of a bit of a serendipitous moment, really. Claire just happened to be listening to Radio 4, and on Radio 4 was being interviewed a chap called Dr. John Church. Now, some of you, this might ring a little bell, because Dr. John Church was developing a bit of a reputation for himself around about that time and was being known within NHS as the maggot man. He'd worked quite a lot in Africa previously and was very keen on the ability of maggots to heal wounds, and was trying to reintroduce that back into the NHS. And that was what the interview was all about. But at the very end, the interviewer said to Dr. John Church, does he think dogs can smell cancer? And he answered that he absolutely did believe that, and he'd really like to do some work on it. So Claire, being the pretty determined woman she is, she straight away did a bit of digging, and continuing the serendipitous element of this, it turned out Dr. John Church happened to be only about 20 minutes away from where Claire was at that point. So literally by the end of that day, Claire was sat around the table with Dr. John Church and her friend Gillian of the malignant melanoma, and that is where the charity started. It literally started that day. It started with in Claire's kitchen and Claire's dining room. We moved on then to a tiny little hut in a village called Westcott in North Bucks. You could only fit about 4 people in this hut. It leaked There were buckets everywhere in the winter and the autumn. It wasn't conducive. And honestly, at that point, the charity sort of lurched from one week to the next, trying to pay the bills and keep going. But they did keep going. And then they moved into a slightly bigger premises, which is where we are based today, which is a village called Great Horwood, just on the outskirts of Milton Keynes. And we've got a fairly large premises now. We've had to grow, because we've had to be able to get more dogs and more trainers and more availability to meet with our client partnerships. So that's how the charity all started. The very first study we did was in 2004, and you see a cute little picture of a dog there called Tangle. Tangle was our first biodetection dog. And Tangle had amazing results. The first study was bladder cancer. Now, obviously, nobody knew what we were doing at that point. It was all very, very hit and miss. But quite quickly, everybody was pretty surprised by how quickly Tangle in particular was picking up successfully the odour of bladder cancer. Tangle's no longer with us, but you can see our little logo there, Medical Detection Dogs. That dog you can see there is actually taken from a silhouette of a picture of Tangle. So Tangle stays with us forever. But I want to emphasize the point to you here, because it's very easy to maybe see some pictures of us in the paper or follow us on social media, and there's pictures of adorable dogs, and very often we've got puppies that just make your toes curl, really cute. And it's very easy to think that what we do is a bit pink and fluffy, but I give you my absolute assurances it is not pink and fluffy. Everything we do is thoroughly underpinned by science. And that is sort of emphasised in the very early days when our first study was published in the British Medical Journal in 2004. And if you know anything about that publication, you know it's not easy to get published there. So everything about us is that dog's nose. It doesn't bear any resemblance to our noses, or hopefully none of our noses. But how it works is very different to ours as well. Now, the dog's nose, I'm going to give you some figures, and the figures are that we have on average about 5 million centroceptors in our noses. In the average dog, there's about 300 million. Now, I don't know if you're like me, if you just throw figures at me, it doesn't mean a great deal, but a way we have of describing that difference. So, you know, if you make 2 cups of coffee, you put sugar in one, and then you're anything like me, you think about something else and you get muddled up which one you put the sugar in. Now, us as humans, if we have a really good sense of smell, you can probably just about pick up that one sugar in that 1 cup. Now, a dog could pick up that 1 sugar in the equivalent of 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools. That is the magnification of their noses to our noses. Okay, so it is astounding, you know, so please, and it's very serious what they can do for us. But that, you know, figures don't work, but that 1 cup of tea to Olympic-sized swimming pools, hopefully that impacts on you somewhat. So we channel that, and so we have these gorgeous dogs, and you might think, where do we get these dogs from? We're in our 13th year now. We're getting familiar with some breeders, so we now know some breeding lines that work very well for us. So the majority of our dogs we get from breeders. We do work alongside a number of other assistance dogs charities. I guess we're in competition when it comes to fundraising, but apart from that, we support each other very much. So often, so for example, we've got a great dog at the moment on the COVID trial, Maple. Maple started off as a guide dog, but they were aware quite quickly that Maple was a fabulous dog, but really Maple wanted to use her nose a lot more than she wanted to use her eyes. So they contacted us, and now Maple is doing brilliantly for us. We also really like, where possible, to have a rescue dog, and we do have a good number. And what a brilliant circle that is. So some of our dogs have not had the best start in life. the rescue charities know what we need, and they contact us sometimes and say, you know, come and have a look at this dog. But how brilliant. Then if we take that dog, we then give that dog a really good pampered life. But in return, that dog works for us and works to save and enhance lives of us humans. And that's what we're all about, medical detection dogs. I think when I'm out sometimes with a stand or I'm talking to people, it's people might say, oh, I don't support an animal charity. That's not what I do. And we are not an animal charity. We are a health charity. We just use the amazing power of those dogs' noses to save and enhance lives of humans. So the dogs, obviously, it's about them having a very good temperament. So they come to us as a puppy, and they will then go and live with a volunteer socializer for about 18 months, 2 years. And during that time, the volunteer socializer works very closely with one of our expert trainers who will decide at the end of that period whether the dog's going to be a good dog for what we need or not. We've done a little bit of work to try and estimate how much it costs us to get a dog to be a working dog. And it's around about £29,000. And obviously that's an average or an estimate, and it changes with different dogs, but that includes the cost of the dog, the vet's bills, the food, the insurance, the training, the equipment. You know, and if any of you there have had a dog and have had a dog that needs a lot of health treatment, you will know that it doesn't take very long for those costs to start mounting up. So the science. Now, I'm not a scientist by any means, but even I can just about understand this slide. So what we know is that when we have a disease, the disease changes cells in our body. And as a result of that change, there's sort of an energy is produced, and that is a volatile. And the body doesn't like this volatile. It's like, get it out, get it out. And the volatile comes out from the body through either breath, urine, or sweat in our skin. And our dogs are trained to respond to that particular odor that our body is pushing out. And we've learned that each disease has a very definite odor signature, and that our dogs can smell it at incredibly low concentrations. So I just want to be very clear. There are two distinct arms to our charity, both very different, but both using that dog's nose. So we have our biodetection dogs and we have our medical alert assistance dogs. So let me just tell you a little bit more about the bio side, because that's probably a little bit more hard to understand because it's new. So there's just a few images there that you can see. That's in our bio building. So it's all done in very clinical methods. And you can see that the carousels that the dogs work around, and they pop their noses in those little canisters, and that's where they alert their handler from there when they're picking up the odours. And it's not, you know, it's easy to think, we're like, oh, what should we have a little go at today? What disease shall we look at? That's not what we do. We work very much in collaboration with hospitals and universities and various different institutions. And what we work on are those conditions that our traditional medical science struggle to diagnose easily and quickly today. And what we do, it's all very much evidence-based research. I know I'm emphasising that again, but I can't get that point over to you enough. It's all, we work in very, very strict scientific methodology and ethics, and everything has to be approved. And we produce our results. Those results are peer-reviewed and published, and so on it goes. The main research themes we work within are cancers, predominantly currently prostate cancer and animal cancers. There are current ones. Neurological, which is Parkinson's. Bacterial, which is Pseudomonas. And malaria, one of the biggest killers in the world. And obviously now, this last year, we moved on to COVID, but I'll mention that to you sort of separately in a moment. Now, we detect on samples. Taking the COVID project out of it, we only detect on samples not on people, which because sometimes we get people contact our centre and say, oh gosh, you know, I really think my husband has prostate cancer, for example, but we're having trouble, the PSA tests are not working very well. Can I send you a urine sample and your dogs tell us if he has prostate cancer or not? Now, the reality is we believe 100% the dogs would tell us, but that's not ethical. We're not licensed to do that. It's not ethical. So right now, where we are today, we do not do that. We detect on samples that have codes on them. They don't have names on them. Obviously, people have given permission for us to have their samples sent through us to the hospitals, but not on people. But we do slightly change that when we come on to talk about COVID in a minute. So our biodetection dogs, they live with volunteer fosterers. So our fosterers give a happy home to the dogs. So when the dogs are at home, they're just a pet. But what the fosterers do have to do is bring the dog into our centre in the morning and take it home again in the evening when it's working on a project. Now, I emphasise, when we say the dogs are coming into work, the dog's welfare and happiness is paramount to us. We know that a dog's not going to work if a dog's miserable, end of. So the dogs have to be enjoying it and they have to like it. So, you know, it's really not like donkeys down the mine, I assure you. When the dogs come in, it's fun for them. They come in and that carousel you can see there, they'll work around that about 3 or 4 times a day for about 20 minutes at a time. That's all. It's a game, it's fun, and they get their rewards at the end, whether that's a clicker, a tennis ball, or a foodie treat. Okay. Now, we all kind of know what prostate cancer is, and you guys know about Parkinson's, but a lot of people are not aware of Pseudomonas. So I'm just going to slightly mention that particular really interesting project we're doing at the moment. So Pseudomonas is a nasty little bacteria that affects people with, particularly with bad respiratory or weakened respiratory systems. My father-in-law, in fact, has this at the moment. Now, what often happens with Pseudomonas is that it will present as a pretty bog standard chest infection, and therefore people go to the doctors and the doctors give them a fairly bog standard antibiotics. But Pseudomonas is a tricky little beast, and the minute it has a fairly bog standard antibiotic, it sort of covers itself in a slime. There's a scientific word for that, but I don't know what that is. So, but essentially that's what it does. It covers itself in a slime and then becomes really resistant to antibiotics and is a huge problem. So that's why we're working closely with the Cystic Fibrosis Trust on this one. Because what we're learning is the dogs can pick up the odour of Pseudomonas very quickly and very effectively. So, you know, you can see the results there, that if people can get the right diagnosis more quickly, then they're going to get the right treatment very quickly, and it's a much happier story. Okay. With Parkinson's, I'm certainly not going to, as Parkinson's charity, I'm certainly not going to insult you by talking about that. But what I do want to say to you about where we are with our Parkinson's trial, where we work with on Manchester University, and it is partly funded through Parkinson's UK and the Michael J. Fox Foundation. Where we have got to with the Parkinson's trial is we have completed what we call our proof of concept study. The proof of concept study is for any research, it's the first one. It proves that there is a point to it, that there's a reasonable feasibility that the dogs are going to be able to do this, and therefore you know, it's right to carry on getting more investment and spend time doing more and more research into this. And you know, one of the things we hope to get to with this one, because please understand, all of our bio trials have potentially different outcomes. Obviously with the COVID, on our malaria project, it's about potentially the dogs alerting to people at ports or wherever there are a huge amount of people. Prostate cancer, it's really about supporting the current PSA tests, which give regularly a false positive result, which results in lots of men having to go off and have very intrusive testing that wasn't necessary. The Parkinson's one, I mean, we're very much early stages with this, and as I explained, the proof of concept, we're looking to be publishing our proof of concept study. I can't be exact, I don't know, but it's done and it's ready to be published and peer reviewed. But you know, what we know about Parkinson's is that people can have Parkinson's for a very, very long time before they're diagnosed. But there is very little research happens by the pharmaceutical companies into Parkinson's research, into finding some sort of medication for people who are diagnosed very early, because people are often not diagnosed very early, they're often diagnosed towards the latter end. Therefore, there's very little medication for people who are diagnosed early. There's that vicious circle, isn't it? The pharmaceuticals are ultimately about making money. They're not going to put research into something they're never going to make any money from. So, you know, partly we hope, if we can be proving with this that the dogs can pick up in minute samples when somebody has Parkinson's, when they have no idea, that would kickstart pharmaceuticals into investing some money into more research in that area. I hope that makes more sense, and I'm conscious that you're a Parkinson's group, and I'm by no way an expert whatsoever in this subject, but and I cannot possibly be more specific about what we hope our end result of our Parkinson's trials to be, because we are only really at the proof of concept stage. But what we do know is those dogs can smell it in minute things. Okay. I'm sure you might have some more questions to fire at me about that at the end if you wish. Malaria, obviously one of the biggest killers in the world, and very similar to COVID, people can have it and be asymptomatic. And you know, those countries that have eradicated malaria want to stay eradicated. So that's where the dogs could hopefully at some point be there on ports to alert authorities to people carrying malaria. Now, COVID-19, I'm hoping some of you might have seen the results we had this week, which were the results of our phase 1. So our phase 1 being the stage that we wanted to see whether COVID-19 had an odour, and if it did, can the dogs pick up that odour very quickly? So with this, we're working in partnership with the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and Durham University. We were really delighted that the government gave us some support for this phase 1, and we found our first Super 6 dogs, and we've been investigating this past year the potential. So our results were brilliant, and we discovered that the dogs could pick up the odour of COVID-19 with 94% accuracy. Now, I need you to understand that we are very confident with that. What we do here, we get to a point which we call double-blind testing. So once the dogs have learnt once we think there's an odour and the dogs have learnt the odour, when we get to double-blind testing, everybody hears, we all get very, very nervous, because what happens, we get hundreds and hundreds, sometimes even thousands of samples arrive here. We have no idea which ones are blanks or which ones are, in this case, COVID-19. So we are totally reliant on the dogs telling us. We then, you know, write down exactly what the results we had, and we send them off to be marked. In essence, somebody else marks them for us. So it's kind of nerve-wracking because we really don't know. And we were delighted that it came back with the dogs having 94% accuracy. Now, keep in mind that 94% accuracy, because medical science say that the lateral flow tests have a 58 to 77% accuracy. Yeah, so, you know, that's quite a difference, isn't it? So, we're really pleased. We are currently on phase 2, which is now teaching the dogs to pick up the odour in a line of people. We have lots and lots of volunteers coming into our centre or going off to, we've been in Luton Airport, we've been in various town centres, we're all over the place, getting our volunteers to line up and the dogs work to pick up the odour of clothing that the volunteers are wearing. So we're well into that. What the future holds, we are still unsure. We have lots and lots of interest. We don't know, but that's as much as I can say right now. But, fingers crossed for all of us. It's just another potential for, wherever there might be groups of people, if the dogs can alert to people who are carrying the scent of COVID-19, even if they're asymptomatic, you don't have to be a scientist to work out the potentials of that. So if you like dogs, it's always nice to look at some of our original Super 6 dogs. So these were our original ones that we picked to start working on the COVID trial a year ago. We have 20 dogs now who are trained, but those are our original Super 6. So you see on the bottom right hand corner there, little Asher. Asher's one of our most brilliant biodetection dogs, and she's so accurate. And Asher was actually a rescue dog. Asher had 7 homes before coming to us and is now doing life-changing work, which is fabulous dog. Now I'm going to tell you something else a minute quickly. It's going to a little bit blow your mind. What we are currently working on with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which apparently the biggest institute of technology in the world. We're working with a guy there who heads up the Department of Bits and Atoms. His name is Andreas Merschin, and he is an astrophysicist. And he is working on developing a device that replicates a dog's nose. Now, he's been over here working with us loads. We've had dogs fly over there to work with him. He was last here, not last Christmas, the Christmas before, and he talked to all of us then. And he says he's got to a point where he's developed this thing. It's about the size of a matchbox, but thin. And he is in no doubt at all that in not too distant future, we will all have a little thing like this in our phones that will tell us when we have some certain oncoming health episodes. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? But if you think how much our phones have come on just in the last 10 years, 20 years, I didn't even have one. So it is mad, but it's happening. And we are very glad to be part of it. But, if you think, how the heck do we do this? Because let's talk about Parkinson's. How we know our dogs know the smell of Parkinson's, for example. But how do we get them to tell us what that smells like? So, we can speak. We all speak English. But if I say to you now, okay, you tell me what lavender smells like. You can't do it, can you? You can't. And we speak, you think purple, flowery. It's really hard. So how on earth do we get these dogs to tell us what something smells like? So this is where we now work with incredibly clever people at the Open University on what we are calling our Canine Sensory Interface project. So you see that little dog in that picture there, he's got his nose on a canister that we use for where we put the odours, the samples. So these clever scientists have built a carousel like that, but it's incredibly sensitive. So what we know is when the dog's trotting around, if he's like, oh gosh, that really smells of Parkinson's, he bangs his nose quite hard on the canister. If he's like a little bit, I'm not sure, it's a lot lighter. So the scientists there are working with building up algorithms. And I say that like I know what algorithms are, right? I don't really, but I understand its patterns. So they're building patterns from that to work out what these odors smell like. And Andreas says they've got to a point where they kind of know some of the components. He explained it a bit. It was like making a cake. They know a cake, you need butter, flour, sugar, eggs, but they don't know how much of each makes that Victoria sandwich. So, you know, it's coming along, it's happening. So, you know, and I've heard people say, well, would that put our dogs out of business? But no, because there are endless conditions we could work on forever and ever. So that's a really exciting thing that maybe won't be in our day, but we're fairly confident it will be something that in our children's, or certainly our grandchildren's days, in those phones. So watch this space. Okay, so that's a whistle-stop tour of our bio work. So then our other side, the assistance dog side, I think, which is a bit easier to understand. We all know about guide dogs and hearing dogs and how that works, and it's essentially the same thing. Our dog is paired up with an individual who has a specific health condition. But where I think our dogs are amazing, so, you know, not taking anything away from guide dogs or hearing dogs, they are incredible charities, but actually somebody with a hearing condition or a sight condition can be helped by us. We can help somebody who has poor sight or poor hearing. Humans can help humans, but the conditions that our clients have, no one can help them. Not the best doctor in the world, not their spouse, not their children. No one can help them apart from our dogs. So keep that in mind. So the conditions we predominantly work with are blood glucose conditions. That's mainly diabetes type 1, hypo unaware. Something called POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which is something where people just become unconscious with no warning whatsoever. Severe allergies and Addison's, where cortisol whizzes through someone's body, and again they become unconscious with no warning. So, you know, I'll ask you just for a moment to just imagine your life when you have no idea when you're going to become unconscious. No warning. You just don't know. And that's how our clients live. So what happens so often is they're hospitalized. Before our dogs, they would be hospitalized because they're breaking bones or they're banging their heads, and they become really, really trapped in their homes, trapped in their chairs very often. So, you know, awful conditions to live with. And our dogs can pick up the smell of these oncoming episodes and give that human a warning that it's happening. So with the blood glucose conditions, Addison's, they give them warning and the person can take medication and prevents the episode happening. With POTS, sadly, nothing can prevent these people becoming unconscious, nothing. So, but what the dog can do is it will give the person warning that it's happening and the person makes themselves safe. So all our POTS clients walk around with a little roll mat attached to them somewhere along the line. So if the person's at home, they sit down, they lie on the bed, or they're in a car, they buckle that tightly. Or if they're just out and about, they will roll down their mat and they will lie down and they will go usually a few minutes and then they come round again. I mean, a horrific way to live, but at least with our dogs giving them warning, they can live. They all of our clients have great faith. The dogs warn them with incredibly high percentage of efficiency, so they can go out and live a little bit. So our dogs give, those things: confidence, a quality of life, independence, freedom, and we know we reduce hospital admissions as well. We keep wanting to do some sort of study to see how much we save the NHS, but it's a big piece of work and we've not got around to doing it. But we know that a client I met recently, a new client, before having a dog, she was hospitalized on average 18 times a month. She has Addison's. So 18 times a month, on average, she would have an ambulance and a stay in hospital. She's had her dog now 3 years, and in 3 years, she's not been in hospital once, not once. So, we know we save the NHS a lot of money, but we can't put a figure on that. So that picture there is lovely Emily and Barna. Emily has a horrible neurological condition, very similar to POTS, and Barna saves her life. Okay. How are we doing for time, Keith? Because what I realised I didn't actually ask, you might just discuss with Marion how much time you wanted.
You're fine. This is fascinating, and I don't want to stop you. Really good. No, yeah, we normally finish around 11:30, but if you want to roll on, that's fine.
Do feel free to do that to me if I am going on, because I can go on for forever. I hope this will play. So what I might, are you okay if I play this video? It's about 5 minutes. This is, because I could tell you all day how brilliant our dogs are, but this is Barbara, who is one of our clients, who we have a little video of her.
Video.
Pardon? Is it okay?
Video.
Good, thank you. Barbara, her story is particularly interesting. She has diabetes, and really sadly, she lost her daughter before she'd heard about our charity. She lost her daughter, who died in the night of the same condition. So you can imagine how she feels about how we've helped her. So let me play her.
I was diagnosed when I was 10 years old, and in them days we didn't have the blood testing kits and everything, so it was seizure after seizure, hospital admissions, just collapsing in school, being too high mainly, high blood sugar, which is hyperglycemia. There was a diabetes conference one year, and I was sitting around a table talking about what it's like to live with diabetes, and somebody there asked me if I'd ever heard of medical detection dogs, and I was just blown away from the minute I read about them. Then I made the application, came to the centre, told them my story, which was sad as well as having to live with the condition. There was other things involved, and that was it really. Started the training and eventually got introduced to Frankie. I'd never ever imagined that a dog could do something like this for me. I just thought that this was it now. I'll be in and out of hospital. I won't have a good quality of life. I'll just have to get on with it, but it won't be very nice. Scary, not being able to sleep at night in case I go low in the night, go unconscious, have seizures. Thought that was it. I was excited to make the first call. I thought it wouldn't be my luck. I probably wouldn't get one, but I'll make the call anyway. It was something I'd never ever heard of. Never heard of a dog doing what these dogs do. So I made the call, and I was asked to come down for an interview, which was fabulous. It was like one of the best days of my life. Just the thought that my life could change. Well, I was in the room, just me and one lady assessor from Medical Detection Dogs. There was a few dogs walking in and out because that's what they did. They're just all around. I was asked all sorts of questions like, what was it like to live with type 1 diabetes? How long I had it? How did I go through school with it? What was my life like on a daily basis? How many seizures I've had? What I'd treated my diabetes with? And then my life story really. When I first heard about Medical Detection Dogs, it was bittersweet really, because I'd lost my daughter to type 1 diabetes, and I thought that if anyone could have had a dog, it should have been her, not me. So having the initial interview, I was still thinking, should this dog be for me? Because why do I deserve this dog when my daughter can't have that dog? So part of the interview was doing a lot of talking around emotions and what my life was like, living with the disease, knowing that it is a killer, because I'd lost my daughter as well. Frankie came to me on the anniversary, well, we trained on the anniversary of my daughter's passing, and then on the day of her birthday, he came to me, which to me is more than special. This dog is more than special. So my blood sugar, if it drops below 4.5, then Frankie has to alert me. If it goes above 12, that's the top range where he alerts me. So he's trained to be alert to anything below 4.5, above 12, and anything in the middle, he just acts normally. The minute he smells a high or a low, that's when he alerts me. Frankie alerts me by either putting his paw on me. He has different ways of alerting me depending on whether I'm standing or sitting. So if I'm sitting down, he'll put his paw on me and he'll stare straight into my face. If I take no notice, which I can take no notice, he'll get up onto the couch, get up onto my knee, and he'll be pawing my shoulders. If it gets to the stage where I say, oh, just leave me, because I am a little bit too low maybe, then he'll jump on someone else in the room. He's jumped on a friend of mine at college while she was writing, just to let her know that there's something wrong with me. So he lets all the people in the room know as well. After he's alerted me, I will get my blood testing kit or my scanner that's got a thing in my arm, and I just have to check that what he's alerting me to is correct. Am I high? Am I low? So I do that first, and then I go and get my treatment. Frankie comes with me and he waits for his treat, which is usually something high value, like pieces of chicken or a bit of ham or sausage, which isn't in his normal diet. So he usually sits by the fridge waiting to see what the result is. Yeah, Frankie tends to be able to just look at my eyes as well. He's smelling it, but without doing anything, he can stare at me and he won't take his gaze away. I look away and I look back and I think, you know something, don't you? My husband works long hours and sometimes he has to work away. And when he worked away before, he was always on edge. What if I had a seizure in the night? Since then, everything's much more calm at home. Frankie will jump on the bed in the night if I go low. And my husband knows that when he works away that Frankie's there. He's there to do that job. I'm out more. I go out walking. I do more exercise. I go shopping. I couldn't go shopping before. I could go shopping, but if I did, I was likely to go too low. And a year before I got Frankie, I collapsed at the till, not knowing what was wrong with me because, you know, it comes on so quickly. I'd also had an episode where my young son was in the shopping trolley and I just couldn't push it, had to sit down, couldn't tell anyone, couldn't verbalise what was wrong with me. Well, Frankie goes everywhere with me, goes shopping, goes out walking and running, visits everybody, and, well, he has the right to go anywhere. He's gone through college with me, through university recently, and he actually sits in on the therapy that I provide. So he's an icebreaker for the clients. You know, when I put Frankie's coat on him, he knows he's in the mode. When he's in the supermarket, wherever we go in public, he walks really well. His head's down slightly, he's concentrating. I mean, he's a joy to be around. He's just marvellous. Very proud of him. I was diagnosed.
That's right. There you go. Okay, let's move on, Barbara. Okay, I went too fast. Okay, so we help children as well, but with the children, the dogs are predominantly trained to alert a grown-up. Now, I've been with the charity about 3 years, and in my first couple of weeks, I met a client who was a young lad who was about 13, 14, and talking to his mum. And I'm the mother of 2 boys, and talking to her and his condition. And she told me before having the dog that her and her husband had for years set their alarm clock hourly, or take it in turns to set their alarm clock, because they would go in and check this boy, because, you know, they genuinely lived in fear. Children do die, and they had their dog. They were paired up, and she said to me that having that dog was like another mother's eyes. And to me, that's probably the most impactful thing. You know, she trusted that dog as much as she did herself, in effect. It was like another mother's eyes on him. So, you know, it's brilliant that we can give these poor children some sort of life back, and the poor parents can sleep. So just quickly, just to reiterate, there are some charities out there that profess to provide assistance dogs, but not all are necessarily come under the Assistance Dogs UK, so always please be aware of that. We are very much accredited, and what that means is that our dogs cannot get that jacket without that yellow circle on it, without having to go through, you know, we as a charity go through very, very rigorous checks, but the dog can't have that. They're not an accredited partnership until the dog, one, is alerting on a pretty much 100% basis, and also the dog's behavior has to be immaculate so that it can go in, you know, anywhere on a plane, on a train, in a hospital, in a doctor's, in a supermarket. So, you know, it's not easy, and it's obviously really important to us that we keep that. So we receive no government funding for our work. Now, I've left this in because that is not really 100% true, because the government did give us an amount of money, though it wasn't enough, for our phase 1 COVID training. Now, this was, although we were so pleased to have that from the government, both the money and the acknowledgement, the flip side of it is there were a number of people who'd supported us for a while, you know, with sort of a £5 a month kind of donations, who sort of said, oh, I see the government are now funding you, I'm going to give my money to somebody else. I'll be like, please don't do that, because the money the government gave us was 100% ring fenced for our COVID-19 work, which, you know, as you know, we didn't see coming. It wasn't in our plans, and we've had to carry on with all the rest of our work and fundraising for that at the same time. So I've decided to leave that slide in, but just say to you, I acknowledge that's not as 100% true, because we've got some funding for our COVID-19 only. And in order to stand still, these are the sort of eye-watering figures we need to raise. And I will also say to you that right now we have a waiting list of 4 years for people to get one of our dogs, 4 years. So what we do, the people who apply, they go through quite a lot of checks, and eventually it's kind of, no, we think we can help you. But the more their condition affects their day-to-day life, the higher up the waiting list they go. So if this, you know, the people who we are matching up with dogs today, you know, their life will be dreadful, I can assure you, dreadful, and that's why they're at the top of our waiting list. But if we took no more new clients on ever, it will take us 4 years to get through what we have. So, you know, we want to grow, we want to be able to have provide more dogs, but that costs money, and that's the sort of money we need to have, sort of, you know, a few more clients sort of every quarter. Just quickly, because I'm sure you've had enough of me. If you like what you've heard today, guys, you know, obviously we're always very grateful for donations. Our volunteers are our lifeblood. Within the charity, we have 50 paid staff, although over half of those are part-time. As of today, we have 658 volunteers. And it is not without exaggeration that if they disappeared tomorrow, we wouldn't last days. We literally wouldn't. So volunteers, obviously, they give a happy home to our dogs, because we have a no kennel policy. All the dogs have a happy home. So, you know, we can't do without that. Our volunteers who do fundraising for us, give talks for us. There was a volunteer speaker who should have been with you today. I don't think I said at the beginning, my role is actually volunteer manager with the charity, and so I oversee the talks program, and I don't give talks very often, but quite honestly I really enjoy it. So but I'm not really meant to do it. I meant to, but today I thought, well, this is lovely. It gives me a chance to come out and meet with you guys and show off about what we do. So, but that's my role. So volunteers are absolutely our lifeblood. We have a sponsor a puppy scheme. You know, if any of you are grandparents, please think about that over birthdays and Christmas, because it's a really lovely little gift. You can just £5 a month, and you can follow a puppy's journey. Which is great. So lots and lots of ways you could help us. And I'm going to say a thank you now then, I think. I'm going to say a big thank you for listening to me. I'll stop sharing so I can see you all. So thank you. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer, but I know I've gone on. You might all be tired and want to go and get a cup of tea. I don't know. You're muted, Keith.
Sorry. Thank you. Wow. I got one question from Barry, who was asking, hold on, how do you keep the test equipment, etc., free from smell and contaminants, as well as what's coming in with the samples?
Oh, well, we do. So we have a separate little building that is our bio building. It's actually called the John Church Bio Building. So the guy I talked about at the beginning, or John Church Bio Building. So we go through very rigorous cleaning. So, you know, it's not just a quick washing up in a bowl. It's all cleaned within within clinical methods. We have lots of freezers, and I can't, I mean, it would take me all day if I try to explain exactly what we do, but please be assured everything in there is done within strict clinical methods. Yeah, because we can't risk any contamination of anything. I can see a question there about epilepsy. We work with non-epileptic seizures. There's another assistance dogs charity that does a very good job with support dogs, do a very good job working with epilepsy at the moment. So we would no way step on their toes. They do a great job. But we do work with people with non-epileptic seizures. Okay.
Can I ask a question, Keith?
Yeah, please.
The last newsletter which we published has a story about Joy Milne, who's the woman who can smell Parkinson.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you'd done any sort of comparison, if anybody has studied the difference between her and the dogs.
No, a good question. We haven't. I'm not quite sure. I guess we could. I'm not quite sure how we'd do that. We'd have to send her around the carousel and compare to the dogs. But we are very aware of her. We've communicated with her on many occasions. The other person, she does have this amazing sense of smell, that lady. The other person who also has an astounding sense of smell is Jo Malone. You know Jo Malone, she makes very expensive candles and perfumes.
Right.
He has been proven to have an amazing sense of smell, far more than most of us average humans. And she has been very interested in our work and has come up to see what we do, and has loved it. And last year she became one of our ambassadors, Jo Malone, actually, because she was, you know, so interested and fascinated by, you know, what I mean, she's got a brilliant one for a human, but it still doesn't compare to our dogs' noses. Yeah.
I did ask Claire, but it may not have come through. Can I assume a single dog is only trained to detect one condition?
Yes, yes, because yes. So if a dog is trained, for example, on prostate cancer, and then for whatever reason we wanted to move it on to Pseudomonas, we couldn't be, you know, you can't untrain the dog, or not with any confidence. So no, so, you know, so that would risk not getting the right results, because, you know, we could think he's alerting to Pseudomonas, but actually is alerting to prostate cancer. He learned 2 years ago. So no, they work on one scent at a time, which, you know, is kind of annoying, because some of our dogs are so brilliant at it and want to do it. And it's such a shame when a project or a trial will come to an end for a while and we can't use that dog, but it is too risky. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Caroline.
Any other questions? Otherwise I'll ask Mark if you'd like to just say a few words, please.
Could I just ask about a trained dog for one particular disease, went into a room full of people who were not known to have a medical problem? Would that trained dog pick out people in the room?
No. So I'm going to take the COVID out of it a little bit. And again, you need to remember that even for us as well, this is all quite new. This is the first time we're teaching the dogs to pick a scent up on a group of people. So if you think on the assistance dog side, the dogs learn is one-on-one, one dog, one human, and they learn that one human's scent and their condition. So I mean, we have heard that, you know, so if a dog's learning the, you know, let's say it's the diabetes type 1 on Joe blogs, and we have heard our clients say, oh, you know, I think they're picking up on my next door neighbour and blah, blah, blah. But they're not trained to do that. They don't, and we wouldn't rely on that whatsoever. And what we've learned is on the one-on-one, you know, one person's scent of diabetes is different to somebody else's on the whole. You know, it's very individual, so it's one-on-one. Now, again, taking the COVID out, but our general, so say one of the dogs is learning Parkinson's, they are taught to pick that up on samples, not people. Now, it's possible, it's not beyond possibility that, yes, maybe a dog might indicate a little bit, but they're not trained to do that. And we have, you know, people sometimes will come and visit us, the centre, and the dog will come round and it's, you know, it's making a fuss, and they're like, oh my gosh, are they telling me something? Oh, no, they're just being a dog and they just want a bit of attention. They just want their tummy tickled. They're not telling you anything. So our answer is, ultimately, it's possible, but because we've not scientifically tested that, there's lots of anecdotal stories about it, but we've not scientifically tested it. So we would know on the whole they wouldn't do that. Yeah, otherwise, you know, it's going to scare the living daylights out of people all the time, isn't it? Every time you go somewhere and a dog's, you know, wants to come and sit with you, you're going to think they're telling you. So on the whole, no. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. But I was thinking about your founder and the way her dog picked something out which she wasn't aware of, and the dog hadn't been trained, but it went to her, the spot on her leg.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what we've learned, the dogs, you know, they do that. There's, without question, we have loads and loads of stories of that happening with people, because ultimately your dog will know you really, really well, and it will, you know, it will love you to pieces, and it will know instantly if there's a change in you. Yeah, you know, remember that magnification of their nose to yours. So, you know, it's very possible if there was something, the dog would be telling you. But we take our dogs, we train them and train them and train them so that, you know, they're getting to a point when they're becoming an accredited partnership, they've got to a point where, you know, there's no questioning how that they're alerting you, you know, whereas your pet dog, he's going to be a bit vague. He doesn't really know whether he should be doing it or not. He just knows that actually that smells a bit funny. I don't know about that. I'm concerned. But our dogs are trained and trained and trained to give their alert. Which can be, usually it'll start off as like a stare. They'll sit and really stare, and if they're ignored, often it's a paw on the leg, and if they keep being ignored, they do get to a point where they are frantic and jumping up and down, or, you know, or barking, but which is good, because if a client's got to a point where they're, you know, they could be unconscious or something, you know, a dog going loopy and barking is going to get some sort of attention, but they don't start off doing that, you know. That you wouldn't be sat in a restaurant and a dog starts freaking out and barking. You wouldn't like that, would you? So it will be subtle, but the partnerships start to, they learn, they know straight away. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Claire, we could go on for a long time. It's fascinating. Thank you so much, and particularly for giving up your precious time. I did see the report on Look East, was it this week, which again was excellent. I don't know whether Keith mentioned, but I first got to know you because of an invitation I had to Buckingham Palace, where the Duchess was hosting a reception. The Queen came along, and she sort of just came along because she was so fascinated. She wasn't sort of billed to be there. And I had the privilege of sitting next to Andreas, I think it is, from MIT. So I was learning all about his box of tricks. And of course, he's a huge enthusiast for this sort of bioelectronics that he is you know, developing very rapidly. And just one other point. I mean, I had hoped from that conversation and contact I'd had that Parkinson's UK were working with you on some research. And if that's not happening, then I should just try and find out and see what's happened, because I know there was one of the research projects that we sponsored was with Jo Milne, and sending her bags of sweatshirts and stuff like that. But of course, that was just very much, that was pre any formal phase of research. So you've prompted me certainly just to go back to the Parkinson's UK folk and say what's happening, because you know, I had hoped there was more that Parkinson's UK could do with you, particularly knowing that you know, one of your dogs has been Parkinson's trained. But fascinating, and as I say, thank you so much for giving up your time in what is an incredibly busy time for you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, my pleasure. Like I said, this charity blows my mind on a daily basis, so I really enjoy talking about it. So yeah, I was happy to come along and spend some time with you all today. So yeah,
thank
nice
you. Could I just ask Ruth if she wanted to say something on behalf of the people from Peterborough? Thank you.
Yes, hello Claire. There's several people here from the Peterborough branch this morning, and thank you for the invite, Keith. It's been absolutely amazing, and I'm so pleased I see that Keith's recorded it, because I know that so many of our branch members that couldn't be here today will enjoy watching it. But one thing that I wanted to just mention, that you said about the magnification of the dog and the 2 swimming pools, I find that absolutely incredible. And how lucky are we that we've got some dogs that can do this for us and help so many people. So I think you do an amazing job. I'll certainly be watching in more detail, and I wish you well with your fundraising. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Claire. Astonishing. Can we just give a round of applause? Thanks.
Thank you. You're not clapping me, you're clapping the dogs. They're the clever ones.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.